So we're going to go back in time here a little bit, do some track mucking. You see how old this is. I got an old corded light. I'm not sure the exact model number on this mucker, but we call it the big mucker. I think it's an Atlas Copco. So we use this mucker on the 90-pound rail. And I like to hold my bucket up like this while the train comes up to me, and it gives them better visibility of where I am. And I give them a little bump here. And I usually have a bucket loaded, so as he bumps into me and I bump into him, the loaded bucket goes way into the back of the car. So it's kind of the same principle with this one as the little one. I take smaller buckets, and the idea is to get the muck all the way to the back of the car so you can fill it all the way. And this thing being so big and heavy, 2-inch bull hose didn't always have enough power to really hot rod this thing around, and you were always kind of mucking down a little bit because you're pushing a pan ahead, and you have to dive the advancing track down so much that you're kind of always backing uphill, and you spin out a lot. So it's best to just take some little buckets and really throw it to the back of the car. This one always scared me a little bit more because it was so much higher on the track with the 90-pound rails and the 4x4 ties. Right after you put fresh track in, you can be quite high in the air, and the rail almost gets tippy, and this thing can get kind of scary. I've actually had it almost right on its side before, the other side. And you can imagine this thing, if it falls on you, you're probably dead. I think this machine is close to 8 tons. It has to be taken apart to be brought up the shaft because it's so heavy. So this is not a bad angle of being able to see the bull hose. You can see it's attached there down by my knees. And when you hook this bull hose up, we usually have a couple 100 feet attached to this thing, and we have it laying in the ditch. So when you hook your bull hose up, you pull it a little bit farther than your machine, and you give it a twist back towards your motorman on the train. And what that does is it kind of puts a special little turn in the hose that when you go forward, it stretches out straight, and when you go back, it rolls away from you and into the wall on top of itself. So it never rolls into the track. You don't have to worry about running over it. You don't have to worry about the train running over it. I mean, you should worry about running over it, but if you put that special twist, you can go back and forth all day, and your hose will just always lay nicely in the ditch. And I think it's a very important tip. I see some people screw that up and they fight with the hose all day. So giving that twist is definitely a trade secret, I'd say. So I know at the beginning of the video I said I like to take little buckets. The main reason behind that is keeping your momentum and being able to really fill that car and really throw that muck to the back. So if you take short strokes, you know, a lot of times you can't get the momentum, and if you have a really full bucket, again, you lose a lot of momentum and you spin out, and by the time you get to the car, you've lost all your speed and all your throwing power, and you'll go to dump the bucket and the muck will literally just fall out into the inside of your muck machine, and it'll get in where your cables and your chains are, and you have to muck it out, so it doesn't work. little buckets go fast. So I do a little angle change here. See, I got the car full now. Tell them to go with my light signal. Usually I ride on the back of the train here, and what we do is we ride off to another intersection, throw a switch, put the car off to another part of the track with the rest of the full cars, and then we come back with an empty car. So my partner actually, there must have been some rocks on the track, but he pulled the car off the track here. It can be common. You see me giving him crap here. So we're going to do a little bit of spragging. So we'll switch angles here. You can see I got my track tie here. It's best to use wood. Metal can go flying sometimes. I've heard on and off that sometimes you're not supposed to do this, but some of those rules just kind of disappeared over time, and this turned into be the good way to do it. So what we do is we wedge one side into the motor, and we kind of put our sprag or our railroad tie on a bit of an angle, wedge it in, and you push on it. Usually you can put a chain or a rock or have something on the other side to keep the car from moving, and you kind of just push into it and it'll lift one side up. You can see, and with a little bit of an angle it'll lift it up and over. So you see him, I'm giving him light signals there, the car is going up, and it slowly tilts over until it goes back on the track, and then we're done. So that method replaces the track jack. So rather than having to get under there, make a spot for your jack it up, and then, you know, maybe some guys pull the jack over. I really prefer spragging. I was taught it early on, and that was our go-to. We fixed a lot of train derailments, and we never really lost time mucking. So we're going to switch over to the little mucker now. So I'm pretty sure this is an MCO V30. We use the same 2-inch bull hose, but as you can see when I stand on it, I'm quite a bit taller than this machine. And a lot of the same principles as the big mucker: small buckets, fast, momentum. This muck machine was used for anywhere from 30 to 90 pound rail. It just used a different development style to advance the rail. So with this machine and this video, you get a little bit better angle of loading the car. So you can see on these cars, there's the left side has a back plate on it that is higher. So with the muck machine, what we do is we try and load the back of the car, and I always tilt to the left so it kind of makes like a backsplash off of the higher side of the car. So when I throw it hard, the muck hits the wall and slides all the way to the back of the car. And the main reason for this, of course, is to get your car as full as you can, but we only had 11 cars, and it usually took 22 cars to muck out a 4.5 by 4.5 meter round. So it would take us 2 trips to the ore pass, and when we were off developing, it took over an hour. So if we could do 1 trip in the morning and then a trip at the end of the day, we could muck out our round before lunch, and then we could spend the last half of the day bolting up and drilling and blasting. So that's how we would keep the cycle with running a train. So it's very important that your cars get as full as possible. You know, if you're doing a 9x9 track drift, you can get your whole round in 1 train, and then you don't even have to go out. You can just drill blast. So that was very important. Mucking was a very critical point in the cycle, where if you went off the track or you didn't fill your cars full enough, you would wreck your cycle for the day. So let's listen to this thing fill this car. listening to this thing. I loved running that machine. It was one of the funnest jobs. Sure, one of the most dangerous, but it was fun. Maybe not in this particular scenario. I'm actually mucking a draw point here. So what had happened is our ore pass was plugged up, and we have these fingers on the other side of the ore pass that we can muck out if we want to really look up them and blast them. So, you know, I have to muck this all out, so I've kind of exposed the brow here a little bit, and I really got to watch and keep my distance, that if this thing starts to run, I kind of have to get out of there. So as the muck pile starts to run a little bit, you'll see me pause, kind of stay back, watch for what's coming down. So it's not really a normal mucking scenario. And we actually had to muck this for several days straight. So I was on this muck machine for probably 8 hours straight. And when you throw your bucket, ideally you're throwing it so hard that the front wheels of your muck machine come off the ground a little bit. So every time I throw a bucket, that machine just hammers, and I'm standing on a steel plate, so it hammers me with it. I remember after mucking this for 2 days, my legs and back were sore. Normally you only muck for a couple hours, muck your round out, and then you're on the jack leg. So this is a very different scenario than normal. So you can see a little bit of a mess that I've made there from filling the car. It's important to keep all that clean, otherwise that's how the car goes off the track. So that wasn't very good at what I had just did there. I had worked with my partner for a long time, so I trusted him, but you know, walking in front of a train like that is kind of a no-no. But like I said, I trusted my partner. He didn't go fast. Some guys, well, actually a lot of guys would lose control of the train, or it would decouple. And if you're not paying attention and the car decouples and you're walking between the train and your muck machine, you can come flying in at you and you could easily get crushed. But to stand on the back of the motor with the operator and then stop and then walk all the way up to the front of the train, it just wasn't a thing we did at this time. Maybe riding inside the car was a little bit safer. We did that quite often, but it just had such a convenient stand on the side there that we took advantage of it. So I think I'm going to speed this car up here a little bit. You can watch the practice of filling the car in a little bit faster motion. So once my car is almost full, my partner on the motor there, he sees he's paying attention, so he gets the motor fired up, and I just usually do a cleanup or fill my bucket before we go and move the train. So when we come back, I put my bucket in the air and slam it into the next car, and then go for a ride. So we'll do one last angle here of mucking the draw point. It gives you a pretty good idea of how hazardous both the machine and the wall behind you can be. It's very important to stand up straight, keep your head up straight, be very aware of your surroundings, keep your pull hose in check, and said be aware of your surroundings. Keep in mind this is an old video with old footage, and safety standards are quite a bit higher now, and a lot of practices we've either stopped using or we just don't do that mining method anymore. Like back when we were mucking this, we used to go, it was common practice to muck under open ground. I had the corded light. With the corded light and no lights around, it was like you pretty much working in the dark. You had no mechanized LEDs, no LED on your head. It was like you might as well have a bunch of candles around. So I admit I slacked a lot on glasses because I couldn't see nothing. And running this machine in the dark and not being able to see is 10 times scarier than watching someone run it in the light. So some closing comments to this video. This is probably one of the most dangerous jobs I've done, this track mucker. And it's certainly not for everybody. I think more and more I believe that mining is like a sport. It's you're an industrial athlete, and not everybody is good at every sport. And some sports can be dangerous. Here's a nice chunk of oversized. So it's really important to be very self-aware underground and keep the right people in the right places, because some people will just screw it up.